These right here are the Moses twins, the twins who were mocked by Dr. Death, Josef Mengele. The horrors that he did to them and to the other twins are beyond imagination. It's simply horrible. The ending of this story is even more striking, but obviously, first things first. 403,713. What exactly is that number? The number of Luftwaffe soldiers or the number of tanks which the Nazis produced? 403,713 people, according to statistics, died in Nazi Germany's concentration camps. That seems way too accurate. But then why do the people who witnessed these events say that these numbers were multiplied another 15 times? Why do they speak of 6 million people, while other sources speak of as many as 11 million people? Who to believe, the official statistics or the people who went through it all and saw everything with their own eyes? Over 1,000 concentration camps dedicated to the extermination of people, which is literally an instrument of mass state terror and genocide. Death factories were specifically designed for the extermination of entire nations, Jews, Slavic people, Gypsies, and so on, and was built on a systematic conveyor belt, as the Nazis liked to do. Strangles, gas chambers, crematoriums, and other means of mass extermination were created. Monstrous medical experiments on people, including children, Majdanek, Auschwitz, Buchenwald, Dachau, Treblinka, and others. And even today, many years later, these names horrify even the most resistant minds. Auschwitz is one of the most famous concentration camp facilities, located near the city of Auschwitz in Poland. In 1940-1945, according to some reports of the 1.3 million people sent to this concentration camp, about 1.1 million died, so only 200,000 survived. There were absolutely colossal experiments on humans, scientific research on living human material, testing of scientific hypotheses, and development of biomedical technologies. The Angel of Death from Auschwitz, as he was called, was a man who ruined a lot of lives. Josef Mengele was a Nazi German doctor who conducted medical experiments on concentration camp prisoners. He considered himself an apolitical scientist, and he was also not particularly interested in politics and did not participate in marches, parades, and meetings. But as a tribute to the time where he was living in, he joined the Steel Helmet organization. Thus, the future Angel of Death found himself in the same place as the Nazis. In those days, joining the Nazi Party was an important condition for career advancement, and he began his way up the ladder of power. Until his teacher Ottmar Freiherr von Verschier suggested him to work in a concentration camp, where, he said, there were great opportunities to engrave his name in history. We will never be able to count the number of people killed by this man. He conducted gruesome experiments on newborn babies, performed surgeries without anesthesia, castrated boys and sterilized women. But Mengele's main passion was the study of twins. The Angel of Death picked up this interest in the peculiarities of their physiology, interrelationships, and causes of birth from his mentor Ottmar Verschier, who was head of Kaiser Wilhelm's Institute of Anthropology, Heredity, and Eugenics. Unfortunately, in fact, almost all the documents on his experiments were destroyed by the bloody doctor himself or by the SS when he retreated. But it is known that more than 1,000 pairs of twins died because of this man's experiments. Because if one died, they killed the other one as well. There are only a few surviving witnesses of the atrocities of this man. And this is exactly a story about such survivors. Two twins who were able to survive the deprivations of the concentration camp and the abuse of the so-called scientists. Eva and Miriam Moses were born on January 31st of 1934 in the village of Port, which is in Transylvania. They were Jewish by nationality. From the memories of Eva, who wrote her autobiography and described all the events in detail, we can reconstruct this whole narrative. She and her sister were the same, even more so than twins usually are. In her book, she writes, "We were so alike that we had to wear nameplates to distinguish ourselves in some way. When the sisters went to school, their mother often chose the same clothes for them to emphasize their connection, and they took advantage of their similarity and often made jokes to those around them, even though their father scolded them about those jokes. Eva was smart, brave, and had a strong spirit. Her sister, on the other hand, was soft and humble. At port they lived on a large farm. They owned thousands of acres of land where potatoes, beans, corn and wheat grew. The Moses family had cows, from whose milk they made cheese. They also had a large vineyard where they made their own wine. Their mother believed to the last that anti-Semitism would not affect their village. Even when word got out that Jews were being forced into labor camps, that special ghettos were being set up in European cities for Jews, they did not leave for America or Palestine, where it would be safe, no matter what. But everything changed in the summer of 1940. Hitler handed over the north of Transylvania to Hungary, which, under Miklos Horthy, began to promote Nazi racial policies. And one day Hungarian soldiers entered the village. Until 1944, the Moses family was not disturbed. Then they were deported to the Czech Republic, to the Jewish ghetto, from where they were taken to Auschwitz that same year. For 4 days they traveled in an overcrowded cattle wagon, and then their mother was asked if the sisters were twins, and upon receiving an affirmative answer, they were taken away. That was the last time Eva and Miriam met with their parents and 2 sisters, since the latter were immediately sent to the gas chamber. When Eva and Miriam were brought into the group on which Mengele was experimenting, they were only 10 years old. The sisters will remember all their lives how their mother held out her hands to them and they were dragged away from her. They didn't even get to say goodbye to her, the sisters recounted. Eva wrote quite a bit in her book about Mengele's experiments on the inhabitants of the barracks. The Angel of Death was an ambitious man. He dreamed of making discoveries, of leaving his name in world history. He paid special attention to the anatomy of twins. Indeed, among the goals he reported to his superiors were the phenomenon of twin birth and research into the effects of disease on humans. But paradoxically, the children who lived in the camp did not think of Mengele as a beast. To them he was just a kind uncle who gave them candy and sometimes played with them. But this was most likely due to the fact that there were children in that barracks who were 5-7 years old, and they, in their naivety and purity, could not evaluate the brutality and atrociousness of his experiments. Eva remembered how the 2 twins whom Mengele had previously sewn together, back to back, joining blood vessels and organs, had been brought into his barracks. They screamed and suffered for days. Then gangrene broke out. They died after 3 days. Soon after, one day, Eva was injected with a deadly virus in her arm. She began to be covered in a terrible rash and had a severe, even deadly fever. Mengele just looked at her and said quietly,
"Yeah, she's almost dead. She'll be dead in 2 weeks."
Eva wrote in her book that she could not allow herself to die, for then her sister would be killed, and so she struggled to hold on. She was seized with fever and had to crawl across the cold floor of the barracks to get a drink just to get a sip of dirty water, and all this through terrible agony. But after a while she was able to beat the disease completely. Her love for her sister caused a miracle and she recovered herself and saved her sister from imminent death. In the end, the sisters managed to survive until the January of 1945, when Soviet soldiers freed all the prisoners. The story that unfolded is even more astounding. The twins were returned to their homeland, where they were taken in by nuns. Then the sisters moved to Israel, as their father had always dreamt of doing. From Israel, Eva moved to the United States, where she studied and got a job as a realtor. In 1960, she married Michael Cora and had 2 children, Alex and Rina. But the consequences of the war did not end there. Because of the experiments performed on Miriam, her kidneys were severely damaged, and when the situation became very bad, brave and loving Eva donated one of her own kidneys to her sister. But it didn't help for long. Miriam died in 1993. Her sister's death prompted Eva Moses to travel to Germany to tell people about the atrocities in the camp and to announce that despite the evil that had been done to her and her sister, she had decided to forgive all the people responsible for the Holocaust. She met the Nazi doctor Hans Munk in person and forgave him. After this meeting, she made a decision to open a museum for child survivors of the experiments. It was opened in 1995. Eva, in spite of the monstrous experiments conducted in the camp, lived 85 years. She died very recently on July 4th of 2019 in Krakow during a museum educational trip. This was a trip Eva made every year. She hoped that through her actions she would prevent a repeat of the genocide of peaceful people, human experimentation, and stop the return of the Nazi regime. Eva did so much to educate the next generations. Very few people who passed through the concentration camps and survived were able to overcome this horror and tell their stories. Subscribe for more videos.